Good morning. Welcome to our presentation where physics meets geography. Our group will be discussing how the two disciplines can be combined. We are a group of 8th grade scientists. You cannot see me. We are a group of 8th grade science teachers, and we took this project on. Our group, myself, Janice, Stephanie, who unfortunately does not have her voice today, and Rob reviewed the geography knowledge of our youth. We found these statistics very frightening. These students are our future, and they need to be prepared for the job market when they graduate from college. This is why we created this curriculum to address this need. First off, we asked, what is geoliteracy? Well, we came up with 3 things. Number 1, to have a solid understanding of the connection between human and natural systems. The second part was the ability to have geographic reasoning. And the third reason was systematic decision making and understanding the impact that those decisions will have on the world around us. We looked at why is having geoliteracy so important. First off, it provides a society of better decision makers. They will have an understanding of the greater picture of their actions, what decisions they make, and how it will impact others, ultimately giving us the knowledge that can lead to a competitive edge in this interconnected world we live in. We need to strengthen geoliteracy in our schools. Students need to understand the connection between human and natural systems. Working closely with the social studies teacher and finding ways to intertwine science and social studies is critical. It means taking teachable moments to educate our students on these connections, asking more why questions to students, getting them to think rather than us telling them. Students' geographic reasoning needs need to go beyond what states are surrounding Arizona. As an educator, it is my responsibility to give students that opportunity. Using tools such as Google Earth to show the birth location of famous scientists can be one example of expanding this knowledge. Having a map of the world in my classroom and referring to it at a minimum of once a week should be a standard for me to take. Our ultimate goal should be to develop solid decision-making skills in our students. How will this decision I'm making impact others in another part of the world? Our students need to think about this. We need to make things real for our students and give them every opportunity that we can to practice this decision-making. What can we do to make a difference? What can I do as a science teacher to make a difference? A lot. After looking at the problem of geoliterate, our team focused on problem-based learning. We wanted to have an engaging lesson that would excite students. Our goal was for students to want to take responsibility for their own learning. Would require us to create lessons that would be teacher-led, yet student-centered. Skills that would be developed would be communication, teamwork, and responsibility. Focused on the needs of the 21st century student and identified that they have different skills than the previous generations. They need to have inquiry skills, geographic literacy, and very strong communication skills. They need to know how to work collaboratively. They need to have time management skills, and they need to be creative, just to name a few skills that they need to be successful in the job market. We identified key geographic standards on what our curriculum would cover. And I'm not going to read these to you, but I will highlight a few. They will construct maps. They will read satellite images. They will identify common characteristics in geographic locations. They will study the effects on economy and the environment. They will work on economic activities and how technology will have an effect on the environment. We also identified key science standards. And again, I won't read these, but I will highlight a few. They will focus on their inquiry skills. They will identify career opportunities that are available to them. They will communicate results of their investigation and how evidence will support their conclusions. Design and construct a solution. They'll explore Newton's laws to highlight some of the standards that we will be using in science. So why did we choose problem-based learning? Well, in summary, we thought that problem-based learning would provide the most engaging lessons for our students, while still giving them a real-world scenario. The ideas we have put together follow the 8th grade science curriculum, while still being flexible enough to change the topics and still providing the same lessons. We've incorporated physics, technology, and geography, while students are using multiple intelligence. I would like to introduce a lesson in global roller coasters. I would like to turn the presentation over to Stephanie. Unfortunately, I believe she still cannot talk. So at this point, Rob and I will both present this portion of her presentation. Would you like to come join me? Okay, this would be the start of the lesson to excite the students. The presentation starts out with 2 links that go to very exciting videos to roller coasters. Unfortunately, we were not able to figure out technology to be able to show those to you, but they are incredible and get students very excited. Next thing, once we get them excited about roller coasters, we identify a problem that the students need to address. And I will read this problem to you because this is the basis of our whole curriculum lesson that we will be giving to the students. The people against serious roller coaster injuries have reported that roller coasters are creating serious safety and health concerns throughout the world. The environmentalists against roller coasters are concerned that roller coasters and amusement parks are doing irreparable damage to the environment. Their joint recommendation is that all roller coasters be shut down. This report has the World Roller Coaster Union very concerned about the future development of roller coasters. You have been hired by the World Roller Coaster Union to investigate these claims and to offer solutions to these problems. The World Roller Coaster Union would like you to present your investigation on safety, health, and environmental issues from around the world. It would be your job to offer corrective solutions if needed and to come up with a 3D model for a safe, environmental friendly, but thrilling roller coaster. So this is the problem that the students will be working on. At this point, once they're thinking about the problem, we have a few slides again to excite them about the thrill of roller coasters and how roller coasters are designed around the world. And that even though they may be familiar with roller coasters from their own experiences, that they may not be like that around the world. So taking a couple slides and showing them. For example, on this slide in Japan, there is a roller coaster that is operated by foot power. It is not using electricity at all. So opening the experience that there are other ways that roller coasters can be operated. And giving them roller coasters from around the world, they can see that there are very high-tech roller coasters and then very low-tech roller coasters on this screen. So at this point, they have the problem. They're excited about roller coasters. If they did not have their own original background information on roller coasters, we've provided that through the pictures. So now we need to start on the scientific side of it. What do they think? We want them to start out using the scientific method and write out their hypothesis on whether or not they agree or disagree against these groups. This would be individual. They would write a paragraph, because writing is very important for the students, on whether or not they disagree and provide some facts and their own personal experiences. Again, this would be an individual activity, and we would identify that there would be no wrong answer on this. Rob, would you like to take the next slide?
Just realized I didn't have my sound on and I kept on talking. So I'll go back to the beginning. Glad to meet everybody this morning. But through the activities that Janice has just described, we believe that the students will be quite engaged in subject matter, particularly if the introduction uses the graphics as we had intended them to do. At this point, after they write a hypothesis, which would be more or less an individual activity, then we would guide them towards doing a shared activity in which the group that they belong to discusses whether or not, oops, hold on, my slides are advancing. Okay, the group discusses, as a group, the individual positions that they have. And then together, working as a group, which is what they will have to do from this point forward, is they have to come up with a position relative to the original statement supporting that position. The results of these group activities, then, we visualize might be put up on posters, posted around the class, so that each group can look not only at their own findings, but also at the discussions that the other groups had. And they can share facts and ideas at that particular point in time. Working again as a group, we would guide them towards formulating a list of topics that they think they will need to research before they can begin to answer their group question. And they're able to refer back to the research problem to help them to develop their research topics. Again, these would be timed activities in order to make sure that the group is moving forward. We've come up with a list of things that the teacher at their convenience might suggest to the group to know. These are items that can be either discussed verbally or they can be put up on the board. But if the students look like they're getting stuck and are unable to proceed, this would be a good way to get them started.
Yes, the main focus of this list was to first have students identify what they felt they needed to know, and then we would help direct them if we felt that they were really missing one of these key points. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I want to reinforce that. I think our intent all along is to have the students develop the ideas on what to do next, as opposed to the teacher necessarily guiding them in a specific direction. The next thing that we did is we thought that it would be very useful to structure a series of activities that the groups would have to go through. We've identified a total of 10 activities. Frankly, these could probably be expanded if people wanted to fit other content areas, because all of these activities in one way or another go across a particular content area in geography. Or they could actually be shrunk depending on what the circumstances are. The first activity was intended to really bring in or tie in the basic tenet of geography, which is maps, and to initiate the process of exploring the issue by locating geographically where roller coasters are situated. There's actually a great deal of information on the web that will allow students to search and identify where coasters are located. And then using that information, we visualize that they would utilize a map to locate where the roller coasters are, put names of countries that they would be located at, so that they would have a physical relationship to the real world in terms of the subject matter that they're dealing with. Secondly, in this activity, they would probably do a little later on as they develop the other activities. We also thought that they could utilize a second method of labeling the same map to enter a different type of information. In this case, the information consists of risk evaluations, such things as environmental factors, for instance. And they would use a very simple red, green, and yellow type of coloring system to identify different levels of risk. We also thought that it would be very useful for them to relate to why there might not be some roller coasters in some parts of the world. And we thought that using per capita income as a proxy for how much resource a country might have to do something like a roller coaster would be a good way to go. And it's information that could be found on the web. So all that information then would be summarized on the maps. And at this point in time, as we get started, some of that information, such as the risk factors, will not necessarily be in place yet. The second activity would consist of now taking the countries that are shown on the map, and we would zero in on countries that do not have any roller coasters. Those countries would be labeled in a different color. We chose blue. We would also have them name the countries on the globe because there is, at least in my experience, an abysmal lack of knowledge about other countries' names. And then attempt to begin to summarize some of the economic information that they would have collected through their web search. This would include the average per capita income for each one of the countries. As a culminating activity or task in this activity, we would ask the students to then focus in on the explanation of why there are no coasters located in specific areas. And since they have collected per capita income, it's pretty natural that they would start to focus on some economic reasons for why there might not be roller coasters in a particular country. The third activity would start to focus in on other factors that might be associated with certain countries not having roller coasters. In order to be able to answer that question, they would have to do research a number of factors. We listed or identified a preliminary list of things that might be suggested to guide their thinking. For instance, are there perhaps laws in certain countries that might be a factor that limits the construction of roller coasters? Is money alone a factor in determining whether countries do have roller coasters? What about customs, ethical type issues? Do they contribute to whether or not a country will accept a roller coaster? And last and not least, we also wanted them to start thinking about not just the safety, but also as a lead into consideration of what is physically involved in building and actually riding a roller coaster. This would start tying in some of the science factors. As a culminating task for this activity, we would expect the group to again come up as a group with an explanation of why some countries have roller coasters and why some countries do not have them. The fourth activity revolved around the issue of safety of roller coasters, because that is one of the key arguments by the group that wants to preclude building roller coasters. And we will have them, again, utilizing web resources, begin research into are there safety regulations and are there differences in the safety regulations by country. One of the things that I think would be very interesting about this particular task and would lead into a number of other areas that could be further explored is, are roller coasters built differently in different countries? And if they are, what might be some of the reasons that they are? Again, while we didn't identify it specifically under this activity, we would expect that there would be a summation associated with it by the group as to their findings. Activity 5 would begin to address some of the health-related or physical hazard-related issues associated with roller coasters. This particular activity, I think, opens up a lot of avenues for further exploration. By the way, when we did this, we wanted to do a presentation that would provide a basis for somebody picking up and exploring areas. This is a really good example of how there is a variety of ways that this could be taken into life sciences and health-related issues and begin to address very specific science-related topics. But in this particular activity, we would have them explore the hazards that might be associated with roller coasters. There are statistics that are published and can be aggregated to show injuries, for instance, and deaths that might be related to roller coasters. Start looking into G-forces and what happens to the brain, which begins to tie this into physics. What do the G-forces do to your heart? Again, a tie into physics and health, life sciences. And do internal organs move while on the coaster? All of these areas provide a tie into science and other content areas. And at the same time, at least in my opinion, I think that they're pretty engaging, particularly for this particular age group that we're looking at. Sixth activity would focus in on researching environmental issues that may be associated with roller coasters. This is to bring the thinking into the focus of that while things may be fun, they do have an impact on their surrounding community. So at this point, we would expect the students to initiate some research on the web again, and the degree of guidance on this can be adjusted quite well. But they would explore issues like, do roller coasters harm animals? As an example, are birds harmed by the fact that there are these tall structures that are up there? Do they fly into them? Or the reverse of that, do the structures maybe provide habitats for them? What about the use of natural resources for the building of roller coasters? Do the roller coasters cause or increase, pollution that has an effect on human activities? And the last area that we chose to identify is, do roller coasters contribute to depletion of non-renewable resources? Again, the activity, we had visualized that each one of these activities would be completed with a summation by the group of their findings and their position. Activity 7 was intended to be, or is intended to be, a very hands-on activity, bringing a little bit of relief to all of this research that we have made our 8th graders go through. And at this point in time, this is probably where they would have the most fun. That would consist of building a 3D roller coaster model. There is a variety of ways to do this, and actually a wealth of resources on the web that pretty well specify for the teacher the degree of difficulty and classroom resources that they would need to provide. Depending on the classroom, this may range from something as simple as a tube of plastic, that is bent, to something much more complex and complicated if the classroom resources are available there. We thought that there should be some minimum standards that are given to the group when they're building the roller coaster. Ideally, the roller coaster model that they build should have a starting hill and then one additional hill that the roller coaster, typically, by the way, that will be in marble, would have to travel through. We also thought that it would be very nice, although I'm not sure that all classrooms would be able to do this, but to put at least one loop into the roller coaster. Again, the idea being here that if you're using a marble, not only does it have to ride down the first hill, but it has to go through the loop. The marble needs to stay on the track, and the track does not to be a continuous track. That really should have said closed loop. In other words, it does not have to go back to the beginning, but it does have a beginning and an end. The end result of this activity would be the actual physical 3D roller coaster model that the group would build. In the 8th activity, we begin a series of activities that are intended to tie this in through communication of the members of the group, not only amongst themselves, but now with the need to communicate the results of the research to the other groups and perhaps to community at large. This, by the way, I think would lend itself very nicely to be a class group project that perhaps is actually showcased at a particular school location. We thought that a very good activity to initiate this communication process would be the preparation of a brochure or advertisement for the roller coaster that they had built in the preceding phase or activity. The roller coaster would, the brochure would consist of either a physical brochure, like a three or trifold type thing. It could be a PowerPoint presentation, and depending on the amount of access and availability of web resources, perhaps a Facebook page that could be shared with people at large. It could be a Glockster poster, or for some kids, if the resources were available, this could be a videotape commercial that they could put together. We would also leave this open-ended in the event that someone comes up with an idea that we have not listed here. At the very least, the advertisement would have to include a map location for the particular roller coaster. It would have to have an explanation of what the roller coaster cost to build, some intended hours of operation, and why someone should travel on this roller coaster as opposed to another roller coaster. The selling points associated with this would be thrill, location, design, safety, and again, we would encourage the group members to come up with their own ideas as to how they would go about selling their particular roller coaster. The 9th activity would consist of the writing of a persuasive essay. We think that writing is a very good tool for tying in all of these different concepts and activities, and it would also force cooperation amongst the team members, the group members, to make sure that they come up with a cohesive presentation. They would have to state their position relative to whether roller coasters should be banned or not. Back it up with their findings using safety, health, and environmental concerns as the basis for the findings. Then explain how those findings support the position, and then a call to action. In other words, they would have to state what do they think that people should do. The last activity in this would be a presentation activity, again, along the lines of communicating findings of a investigation or scientific process. Actually, it's not just scientific, but a combination of a variety of content areas. We would expect that the group then would present their recommendations to the World Roller Coaster Union. That could be the other groups in the class, or if this is being done in a larger context, like perhaps a school setting, it actually would lend itself very nicely to that. Students would be expected to present their position as to whether they agree or disagree with the recommendations that are made to the union. They would have a chance to demonstrate the roller coaster model and also try to tie in some of the investigative activities that they had conducted, and then essentially make their final recommendation to the union. That's basically the end of the things that we had. We'll take questions, I guess.
I would just like to add that we are also touching on the standards, the national science standards as they're changing and incorporating a lot of writing and reading standards that we will need. This final slide here is the final products that the students would be developing. They would have a 3D model, they would have brochures or PowerPoints or video commercials, and a persuasive essay. So we feel we're not only touching on geography standards, science standards, but we're also touching on language arts standards. And thank you very much for your time. Any questions?
Well, I would love to clap. I don't think I have a speaker. Can you hear me? I would love to clap, but I don't know how to do it.
I heard clapping. Somebody knows how to do it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I have a quick question, if possible, too. Since you're doing all the research for this particular project, and obviously this class is being facilitated in a virtual world, had you thought even about pushing the experience further where you would be able to prototype and use a virtual world to kind of create your roller coaster sort of scenarios with your students?
We did have that discussion many times. We had some concerns on what would happen with a group of 8th graders in a virtual world, and it would have to be something that would be very monitored and watched, but they have the technical edge that they could probably come into an environment like this and create a whole amusement area. They could create a roller coaster in Second Life, and I believe they could do that. Whether or not schools have those resources available for students was an issue that we did discuss, that we tried to focus a lot of the products that students would be working on what the majority of the school districts across the state may have available to them.
Yeah, and if I may add to what just Janice said, aside from Second Life, there are actually online roller coaster virtual building sites. So there is ample opportunity to do this in a virtual type of environment. But as Janice indicated, I think the biggest concerns were, number one, whether or not schools would have the resources to do this for a large group of people, because this is live streaming and it requires a lot of bandwidth to be able to do it. And secondly, I think that we all felt a little uncomfortable with some of the places that the children could go to when they get into a virtual world like this.
I did see somebody throw up a question about Legos. One of the things I do with my students is they create roller coasters with Kinects. I do have Kinects systems in my classroom that they do that. We also have a whole host of resources. As Rob was talking about the different activities, we have web links for many sites that students could go to. We have rubrics for the essay that they would need to create in the brochure. What else did we create, Rob, that I can't remember?
I think that just about at every step we created a list of resources that included at the very least links, in some cases hard copy of things like standards. So I think you pretty well covered it.
I just wanted to mention that your final product you might want to include their presentation to the community or whatever presentation you have them do as a final product. And it also aligns with the literacy communication standards, giving the speech itself as a final product. Also wanted to ask if you think you'll be implementing or able to implement part or any part of the problem-based learning into your classes, and if so, are you going to need to share your ideas with your administrators? And what do you think about that?
Well, I'll go first. I'm not sure that because of my circumstances I can implement the full project exactly the way that it's shown here with all of the activities that I've shown. There are certainly elements of it that I will be putting in place and doing, and if I can, I will go for the full scope of activities. In terms of obtaining permission from the administrative part of the school, I think that I would have to pass this by them and make sure that they're on board with the idea and the process.
As far as my administrative, they are very supportive. We actually have a whole area in our school that is devoted to kind of out-of-the-box learning. I've already incorporated some of the Google Earth into my lessons in the last 3 weeks that we've had school. I don't teach physics until the second quarter. I plan to incorporate a lot of what we created. I struggle with how much the physics part I need to teach them beforehand versus letting them go at their own. So that's just some teacher things I need to overcome. I did want to address Wayne's question, if I can find where it went. Or maybe I did, on how they took to the activity. I have been teaching roller coaster building, and they love it. Roller coasters is the most exciting thing that I do teach to my students. They all understand, for the most part, roller coasters. I would say about 80% of my students have ridden some form of roller coaster. So they have loved the part about researching roller coasters, finding out information. The safety and the geography part of it would be a new aspect that I would be bringing into my students. And I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, just so the panel is aware, these we made sure that there was no limits on what the groups were able to develop as far as their problem-based learning. And so these are projects that they hopefully will be able to implement during the school year. So it's going to be totally awesome. We're definitely going to have to follow up with them as they implement in their classrooms as they can.
I would like to just add was going to say, I'd like to add that taking this class has made me incredibly aware of all the opportunities that I now have in my classroom to teach geography. I was slightly aware of it, but I am very aware of it every single day, and I am finding an opportunity whenever I can to increase these students' knowledge on geography literacy.
I wanted to add that I really appreciated that you mentioned in the presentation that with each of the activities that you have planned, you're thinking of it in ways that are child-centered, so that a lot of it will bubble up and emerge from the students, but you have all of these goals and ideas in mind so that you are ready to direct them, but also ready to let them go explore and pull back, which is the whole process of student-centered inquiry. And also that you mentioned compacting and extending in some areas, depending upon the student need. You will compact the information or expand on it. Very good thinking for differentiating their classes. There's so much really powerful learning that opportunity that you got ready for your kids. It's very impressive.
Well, thank you very much for your excellent presentation, Stephanie and Rob and Janice. We appreciate your. Everybody give them a nice round of applause.